the most emotionally mature people are the most reflective people. And that's what the research shows us. So the number one thing we can all do to be more emotionally intelligent is just to reflect after something happens and not just let it happen again because it was easy. But how do we actually reflect on it and go, wait, maybe there's a better way to do that. Maybe I should say something differently. Maybe I shouldn't. Wear a hat or don't wear a hat so people recognize me, right? You reflect on the experience and you made a change today.
Great experiences build great leaders. Great leaders build great teams. This is Building Great Sales Teams.
All right, guys, welcome back again to the Building Great Sales Teams podcast. We're here at the Badass Business Summit. We just had Donnie on the podcast, and now we've got his partner in crime, Stevie Dawn, on the podcast. She's a professional speaker, and selfishly, I had her on for myself because I want to do more speaking. She's also a corporate trainer. She's got her literal, this is not a metaphor, she's got her literal Ph.D. in leadership, and she's an emotional intelligence expert. I'm not done yet. Buckle up. She's been on 575 keynotes, guys. We're going to learn a lot today. 400 plus corporate training sessions and 30 media appearance. She's an accomplished author, 5-time entrepreneur, and one of my favorite facts, which I need to hear the backstory on.
Yeah.
She's addicted to sharks.
I am. You want to start there?
Yes.
Okay, let's start with
100%.
sharks. So, number one, I was scared of sharks like everybody else because my parents took me to see Jaws at like 5, which is dumb, super scary. And then they took me to Universal Studio where it popped out of the water at me on the boat. I was terrified of the ocean.
Okay.
And so being terrified of the ocean, a reference to sharks is not something that happens a lot in your life. But I was going through a tough time. I was a competitive dancer for years, and I was traveling and dancing, but you plateau and then you stop winning and then you want to quit. Everybody wants to quit once they stop winning.
Yeah.
And so I had called my mom and I was like, Mom, I think I'm just going to quit. I think I've done this enough. I've been doing it for 20 years. I'm good. And she's like, well, what do they have that you don't have? And I said, well, they're younger and more flexible and cuter, but anyway. And she's like, no, I don't think that's it. She goes, I think the difference is they're not trying to prove anything and you are.
Okay.
You're trying to prove to yourself that you still belong. She goes, you just need to go out there and be the shark. Sharks don't care about who else is in their ocean. They're being the shark. They know who they are. They're just doing their thing, swimming around, eating people. They're good. She said, I think you just need to go be the shark, own that floor. And it was the silliest reference ever.
Yeah.
Why would you say that to me in that moment? And she says, to her defense, she says it was because in the background, she was watching like a shark movie, like the B sci-fi movies in the background. That's why it came to her head.
So this origin story is happenstance.
It's absolutely happenstance. But that phrase, be the shark, stuck with me.
Okay.
And I went to the next dance event where I was planning on not doing well, and I won. And then I won the next 14 after that in a row.
Wow.
And retired undefeated that year. And everybody's asking me, what'd you do different? What'd you do different? Nothing. The only thing I changed was my mindset. That was it. I just started saying, be the shark. And that worked for me. And so I decided after that, if I was going to use that as a mantra, I better actually know it. So I got in the ocean for the first time at 28 years old. I had never gotten in the ocean. I got in the ocean. I swam with nurse sharks.
No way.
I started to learn everything about sharks that I could. And then in 2019, I won the Shark Week sweepstakes for Discovery Channel.
No freaking
And
way.
I went cage diving with great white sharks.
Wow.
Yes. So I am addicted to them now. They are everything to me. But it's just about owning who you are. And I think that's what entrepreneurship's all about, right? Is owning who we are and saying, this is who I am. This is what I provide. And once you know that and believe that and you stop trying to prove anything to anybody, that's when it gets easy. That's when sales gets easy. When you're truly able to just know your value, then I'm not trying to prove anything to you. You either want it, you don't, whatever. But I don't need to prove it to you. I've proven it to myself. And that to me is what Be the Shark really means.
I love it. And what you're talking about at the end there is what I like to call indifference. It's a strategy in sales, an impulse factor, as we like to call it. But no, I love this. I love this freaking story. You swam with great white sharks.
Yes.
Like that's fantastic. And so, my show's incredibly tactical, right? When I do solo episodes, like if you're not in that space, needing that niche, you might fall asleep. Seriously. Yeah. And so I know a lot of people like doing mindset-based stuff, culture, values, like that's out there in abundance,
Yeah, absolutely.
But I love hearing your story because it shows you how impactful mindset can be and emotional intelligence on top of that.
Absolutely.
You have to have a high emotional maturity and intelligence in order to be able to just focus on yourself and what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. And not listen to the noise.
Yes.
And when I went from my sales work to consulting, I was listening to all this noise around me and trying to prove that I was, this person, this expert, whatever the case is. And after a while, I found that just focusing on my niche and doing my thing gave me 10x.
Absolutely.
And
I think if we're talking about expertise, right, I think that's one of the things. We have to believe we're an expert.
Yeah.
And we have to give ourselves that authority.
Right.
And I think sometimes that's the mindset piece that's missing. But for me, that authority in my business didn't just come from my mindset. I mean, that's where it starts. But for me, it really came from stages. The more I got on stage, the more authority I had.
Heck yeah.
The more I was able to even see myself as an expert because, somebody else does, right? I needed that external validation to give me internal validation.
It's a feedback loop.
It is a feedback
matters.
loop,
Yeah,
and it matters.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes as entrepreneurs, I hear all the time, like, I couldn't speak on stage like you do, or I couldn't do that many keynotes or whatever. And I'm like, at a certain point, I understand it. And in the beginning, it was scary for me too. But there is nothing more like rewarding and revalidating that you're in the right business, doing the right thing, than getting up on stage, saying something and having somebody come up after and go, that's what I need to hear today. That was it. All you need is one, and it was worth it. And I think so many people avoid the stage, avoid even podcasts, what we're doing right now, because they're like, oh, what if I say the wrong thing? So you're human, and people love the humanity in business owners. And that's what's important.
And what do we always talk about? Your first podcast is going to suck. We were just talking about it.
We were literally just talking about it. Like, it's going to be terrible.
I've been people's first,
Yeah.
Like I was their first guest. It was the first time they hosted, and it went terrible. And I had to carry them through the whole episode. You know what I mean? But that's the point. You got to get the reps. Like anything else,
you got to get the reps.
You didn't become the expert that started that podcast because, you were an expert automatically when you came out of the womb. You had to get the reps first, right?
Well, and I think that idea of just you got to get the reps applies to stages. I think it applies to sales. The only reason I ever got good at sales is because I had to keep going, having more sales conversations.
Yeah.
I wasn't just brilliant at them to start with. I sucked, but I had to go through it and keep going through it, and you learn how to have those conversations and how to make that work for you. So reps are important no matter what.
I couldn't agree more. So what I'm also interested in is your Ph.D. in leadership.
Yeah.
And the emotional intelligence piece as well. Because I think so much of leadership is just shutting your mouth when you want to respond negatively. You know what I'm saying? And this is something that I've learned in 38 years of life, right? What about the people that haven't gone through all this yet, and in your mind, when you're talking to someone, you hear them respond emotionally and it's from a place of insecurity or, trauma wounds or whatever the case is, they're coming from that place. The only reason you know that is because you've had that life experience, right? How do we compress that? And what did you learn about emotional intelligence that could help that young person that's, 21, 22?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that happens over a period of time of life, or even in a job, if you work there for 8 years is different than if you work there for one. Like over a period of life, you make mistakes,
right? And
you learn from them. And I think one of the things that leadership teaches and that great leaders do is they reflect.
Okay.
Let me take a moment to okay, I just had that sales conversation, or I just had that conversation with my employee. Let me take a minute afterwards and go, did it go okay? Did it go well? What could I have done differently? What could I have done better? The most emotionally mature people are the most reflective people. And that's what the research shows us. So the number one thing we can all do to be more emotionally intelligent is just to reflect after something happens and not just let it happen again because it was easy. But how do we actually reflect on it and go, wait, maybe there's a better way to do that. Maybe I should say something differently. Maybe I shouldn't wear a hat or don't wear a hat so people recognize me, right? You reflect on the experience and you made a change today.
Yeah, exactly.
Y'all, nobody recognized him coming in here because he had no hat on.
I had a
and we all
blazer
know
on.
he wears a hat.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
One of the things I don't, it grinds, you know, the two things grind against each other is a backwards cap and a blazer.
Yes.
You know? And I get it. People do it and it looks cool. You know, if you're a tech CEO, sure. You know what I
It
mean?
would look cool on you. You could pull that off.
And so I was like, I want to wear the blazer.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I didn't wear the hat.
Nope.
And nobody recognized me when I walked in. And you guys that have watched the show have known I've always had a backwards cap or a forwards cap in every episode.
And so you reflected on that and you went upstairs and you put a cap on because that's what you know you needed. But that was a reflective moment. We don't think about those as reflective moments, but we all have them.
I was going to say that's probably why it took me so long to become emotionally intelligent because I didn't reflect a lot.
You didn't reflect a lot. And so when I teach new people, the first thing I tell, especially like new leaders or young leaders, is the first thing you got to start doing is every day, just do a little reflection. End of the day, ask yourself 2 questions. What went right? What went wrong? That's it. 2 questions. Very easy reflection. You'll have positives. You'll have negatives. The goal should be the next day. Those answers should not be the same.
You know, this really applies to role play.
Yeah.
So as a leader, when you see role play happening, most people's instinct are to stop at mid role play. And so what I always teach my trainers is don't stop.
No, you got to go all the way to the end.
Let it go all the way to the end,
Yep.
and your constructive criticism for them will be so much better because you'll have seen the whole thing.
Yes.
You know, and it's one of the hardest things for people to do to be quiet and let it happen.
Yeah.
You know, let the train wreck happen.
Exactly. But the only way we learn is from those train wrecks.
Yeah.
And the truth is that's how we all learn, and that's how we learn from a baby. You don't learn to stand up because everybody keeps telling you to stand up. You learn to stand up because you stand up, you fall down, and so you try it again. If you just gave up, none of us would be walking. We would just crawl through life. The reason we don't is because even as children, we reflect. Hey, that was hard. Let me try something different. Let me grab onto something. That's why children grab. That's them being reflective. I tried it on my own. It didn't work. Let me get a helper. Let me get it. That's all we need to do. And it's simple, but it's not easy. Right? It's simple to say, let's just reflect on things. We'll get better if we reflect. But that doesn't make it easy to do because some of us are going to look at that reflection and we're not going to like what we see.
Yeah.
And that's going to be demoralizing or demeaning to ourselves. And we're going to have to fix it.
We might not even do it because it takes time.
Yeah.
You know, and time is valuable.
Time is very valuable. And I teach my leaders, there should be no reflection that takes you longer than 10 seconds. If it takes you longer than 10 seconds, it's not worth it because you're not going to put in the time. So I ask them for 10 seconds at the end of the day. What went right? What went wrong? Tomorrow, ask the same 2 questions, get different answers. As long as you're doing that, you're growing because that means you're not making the same mistakes and you're trying new things all the time. That's what we got to do. That's what it's about.
This is great advice, especially for people that are new to leadership or that want to be leaders someday. You know?
Absolutely.
It's one of those things you get the reps in, those reflection reps,
Yep.
and you're going to be in good shape. And so when you go from being a leader to wanting to be maybe a thought leader or maybe speaking on stages, and this is a very selfish question, guys, because, you know, I think I've done like 30 talks from stages, and my first one was, you know, you talked about you just got to start. Well, it was 5 people, and then I had one come up to me and say, that's what I needed.
There you go.
And it was like wildfire from there. There was no stage too small or too big that I wouldn't jump on. Yep. And so, but what, I guess, when does it go from being a hobby to, all right, hey, this is what I do. Yeah. You know, this is one of the things that I do and I actually get paid for.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you pull that off?
So I think it really, I think for everybody starts the same, which is it starts as a marketing tool, right? Yeah. That's how it started for me. I didn't consider myself a speaker as my title. I was a consultant who would speak as a way to market my business.
Okay.
Let me teach you in big groups, and then maybe you want me to teach you individually as a coach.
Which I will say is my most effective prospecting tool.
Yeah.
Easily.
Absolutely.
I've gotten my best clients from stages.
From stages. And I encourage every business owner, that's what I'll be doing today at the summit this afternoon, is encouraging people, get on stages, because it's the number one marketing tool you have, whether you want to be a speaker or not. It's a great marketing tool. But the second thing, if you decide that, hey, I enjoy it, I want to do more of it, it's addictive, right? And for some people, it really becomes an addiction, right? And it is for me. Then you really have to start looking at who will pay for this information in large groups. And that's the key. We always ask who will pay for the information. Oh, entrepreneurs will pay, but in large groups, they may not, right? But who will pay in large groups? And so what I found is, for my topic of emotional intelligence, communication, leadership, that area, right? Soft skills, who will pay? Associations. Okay. Associations pay for speakers every single month. They all have a speaker budget. It is common to pay for it. Nobody asked me to do it for free for an association. They know it costs money to get good speakers, and they will pay it. So I found that's my niche, associations. But I can speak to a law association. I can speak to a commercial real estate association. I can speak to a CPA association. Doesn't matter what the industry is, because it matters that it's an association. Because who will pay for what I'm teaching in a large group? And so that's really the key piece that takes you from marketing to paid, is you got to find that group that'll pay you, and find people that'll pay you consistently. Because the other thing is, if you're just trying to get the big conferences, and this is something I learned the hard way. Yeah. Big conferences, I remember one I did, man, I thought I was hot shit. 1,500 people. Wow. I was in an expo center. They had my face all big on the screen. It was awesome, right? I did the keynote, and I was like, this is life. Yeah, but they can't have the same keynote every year. Right? So they had me once. It's been 10 years. I haven't seen them again. Right?
Yeah.
But that's the case, right? So people get so excited about keynotes. Keynotes are great, and you'll get them. But what you really want is who will pay you again. Who has other programs they can bring you into? Who has other ways they can use your services? Okay. Because if you just go in to do a keynote at a big conference and that's it, I have a couple of conferences that they rotate me on every 3 to 4 years. Okay. Every 3 to 4 years, I get to keynote, got new people coming in, because they have new people come in. They can't have the same person every year. That makes sense. Yeah. So it really is, number one, find the people who will pay in large groups. Number two, find the people who will pay you more than once. Again, I come back to associations. They have monthly meetings. They have regional meetings. They have national meetings. They have virtual meetings. They have all kinds. So I can get the same association to pay me for 5 separate engagements. Wow. Right? Yeah. So that's just more bang for my buck, right? In terms of the amount of time I put into build that relationship and cultivate that. Well, if I'm getting 5 bookings from it, that makes a lot of sense. If I only get 1, then it really didn't work out for me. And that's really my third point, is how do you make sure you're rebookable? Right? Which means you got to have more than one thing you can teach. Right. Yeah. And you've got to be willing to, while you're teaching the thing they paid you to teach, talk about the other thing that you could teach that you're not teaching today. Yeah. So that then somebody comes up to you and goes, hey, so you said you talk about body language. How do we get you in to talk about that? Well, let's have that conversation. That's how I start my sales calls. Right? They come to me wanting something they heard I did from stage, but that's not what I taught them that day. Beautiful. And then they want that. So those are the 3 things I think can get you started in the pay game.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, last question. We're limited on time here. Remote work. Yeah. Okay. I manage a lot of remote teams as a fractional CSO or a fractional integrator. Okay. Right? And I think we do things naturally to facilitate that, and we try to make it as engaging as possible. But how do you recommend we manage remote sales teams?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing with remote is making sure that in the remote environment, everybody feels seen, which I think can be hard. I can't make eye contact with everybody over a computer. Right. But I can use names. One of the number one things you can do to engage people online is to call people's names out.
And you can't forget them. They're on the screen.
Right? They're on the screen. You can literally read them. It's not hard. But not even to call on somebody. Like I may not say, like, hey, Doug, what do you think about that? I may say, so last time I was talking to Doug, instead of saying the last time I was talking to a friend or the last time I was talking to a colleague, name them. Have it be somebody on the call, and automatically you re-engage. Because anytime any human hears some other human's name, we think it's gossip. So we definitely tune in. It's programmed into our brains. And so you can re-engage them. So use names a lot. I do call on people a lot in virtual environments to try and connect. But then if you're really trying to manage remotely, the big thing is don't leave the group as the only way you connect with them. Find ways to connect privately, whether it be one-on-one in a video or one-on-one on a phone call, or even just in a one-on-one chat channel, like through Slack or something. It's about making sure as a manager, I manage the team, but then I also manage them individually. And I think that's what we lose in remote, because the team becomes so easy. Oh, let's all jump on. We didn't have to drive. We didn't have to go anywhere.
Right,
let's all just jump on and let's go through this stuff.
Go through the
motions. And in a group, it's really easy to have everybody shake their heads yes.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they actually heard you. So I always tell my leaders, follow up with those one-on-ones, even if it's not a scheduled one-on-one for like a half hour, even if it's just a Slack notice to them that just says, hey, great seeing your face this morning. Let me know if I can support you today.
I love the advice of calling out their name, but doing it in such a way, because I didn't realize I do this. Now that you said that, I do this naturally. So what I love about being an SEN approved speaker is the meeting happens first and then you talk. So I get to grab references. Pieces of stories, and then I get to say their names. And then what happens when you say someone's name? Big smile.
A big smile. And
then what happens when you
see
someone smile? Other people smile.
Other people
and then all
smile.
of a sudden the whole group is smiling, and it doesn't even matter what you're talking about. You're giving them the good vibes.
It doesn't. And it's such an easy thing that we just don't think about doing in a virtual environment, because we're staring at a computer screen. We're not looking at them specifically. Yeah. And so it's easy to just forget that they have a name that we could use. So it is a huge win.
Oh, and don't start without the camera on.
Oh, please.
I will call you out so fast.
Yeah, no. I don't care what you look like. I just need to see your face.
All right. Selfish last question. I think we have a little bit of a buffer here.
We do. Yeah, we're good.
So what does legacy mean to you, and what legacy do you want to leave behind?
Oh, that's a good question. Legacy to me means that for one generation after my death, people will know my name. That's what it means to me. So how do I accomplish that, or how do I achieve that? Through teaching, through training people, training other speakers, so that then when they get on stage and they do something and they think of me in that moment, or somebody says, where did you learn to do that? They'll say, well, Stevie taught me. I mean,
or
she's
be part of their
she's
talk.
long done and dead now, but she taught me something. And then even in my other side of life in our theater company, training the next generation.
Of course you're in theater.
Yeah, I know,
That's
right?
fantastic.
It doesn't, yeah, everything I do is on a stage. Just depends. Just matters which kind. But in our theater company, we have a big program to educate and integrate younger into our theater company. And that means that we're training the next generation so that they'll continue our theater company after we're gone. So that's what legacy is.
I love
for
that
me.
so much. My two oldest are actors.
Really?
Yeah, and they have not missed a theater practice, theater production.
they love it.
Any of that stuff. And I'm like, you got to get into the local theater, like the city theater.
Yeah.
You'd have so much more fun, you know?
Yeah.
But no, thank you so much for sharing that with us. I have no doubt you will. And anybody that listens to this episode will now have concrete, tactical things they can take away, but also like a different mindset in how to act like a shark and how to be a shark in today's business world.
We need it. Love
love
it.
it.
Thank you so much.
Let's get building.